Aileen McCallum. I am on the DOTI Advisory Board, and I am the co-chair along with Alan Cogill. Sorry, I always mess that up. It's in my head. I am looking at the number of people here. While everyone is coming in, I'm seeing a number of our DOTI Advisory Board members that have not renamed themselves in Zoom. We've had a number of people request that you put your full name and then the district that you're representing, or if you're a mayor's rep, that would be really helpful for our attendees and viewers. There you go. Thank you, Alan. Let's see, Jake, Joe, Julie. Julie's got her full name there, but not the district yet. Tinsley, calling you guys out just to make sure.
Ellen,
Plus,
can you give me
I
a
don't know that we have
second?
quorum. Yeah.
Let's have the interpretation do the introduction.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you, Nora. Thank you for the heads up. As I think this is only my second time leading the meeting. So thank you for the prompt. So I'm going to hand it off to, I think, Nora. Is that how you pronounce your name?
Correct.
Okay. Let's hand it off to Nora to help explain the Spanish interpretation services that we provide at this meeting.
Thank you, Eileen, and good afternoon. To make this meeting accessible to more Denver residents, DOTI offers Spanish interpretation on a regular basis. My name is Nora, and I work with Language Access LLC, and I'm part of your interpretation team. If you want to take advantage of this service, click on the globe icon at the bottom of your screen and choose the language of your preference. Buenas tardes. Para hacer esta reunión accesible para más residentes de Denver, DOTI ofrece interpretación de forma regular. Mi nombre es Nora, trabajo con Language Access LLC, soy parte de su equipo de interpretación. Si quiere usar este servicio, haga clic en el globito en la parte inferior de su pantalla y escoja el lenguaje de su preferencia. Gracias. Thanks, Eileen.
Awesome.
Thank
Thank you so much. Thank you, Anita. Okay, so now we're going to do roll call. Paul, our secretary, had an unexpected coaching requirement. He is a lacrosse coach in his community. And so he asked Julie if she could step in and help us out with roll call duties. Julie, are you ready to do that? Do you have what you need?
I was asked to take the minutes. I don't have a list,
okay.
and I apologize. I'm using my phone for audio, so I cannot. It's just too small for me to be able to see
Don't
what
worry
I need
about
to
it.
rename myself. But I'm District 9, so I'm here all set up to take minutes. But that's why I did not rename myself, because it's just too small.
Aileen, I can help with roll call if you'd like me to. If Julie is
That's
kind enough to help us with the
Alan.
notes.
And if you have a list and you're checking it, that would be helpful, so I don't have to keep telling people to stop with names.
Oh yeah, no problem.
That would be
Okay,
great.
Alan, I'm going to hand over roll call to you then.
Yeah, that would be great. Alicia Brown. I'm here. Amy Contreras, are you here? Andy James.
Yep, I'm here.
Great. Aileen, you're here. Brian Carroll. Daniel Shepard.
Here.
Great. Ian Chaudhry. Jamie Lewis. Jamie is not here. He has an excused absence, but he did send in a proxy. Jake Cohen, I saw you. Joe Levy.
Yep, I'm here.
Great, welcome. Julie, you're here. June Churchill. No June quite yet. Paul Gonzer, excused. Tinsley, I saw you.
Here.
Welcome, one. That puts us at 8. We are 1 short of quorum, so we should maybe postpone the approving the minutes till later, but hopefully June or others will be joining us here shortly.
Great. Okay, then we will just postpone those meeting minutes for a little bit later in the meeting. Hopefully we will reach quorum later on. In that case, we will move on to public comment. Nanita, do we have anyone signed up for public comment?
Yeah, it was one person signed. Oh, he's here. Okay. Namane. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name. Henderson? Let me, oh, where did he go? Okay.
Thanks for
Henderson, are you
raising your
in?
hand.
I think I just moved him to the panelist.
You did, yes. Sorry, thank you. Hopefully everyone, my screen is loading. So just give me 1 second here while I toggle between different windows that I inadvertently moved around. I'm here to, good evening. My name is Nam Henderson. I'm here to ask you to encourage DOTI and the mayor to advocate for prioritizing safety and reliability in CDOT's Federal Boulevard Bus Rapid Transit Project. Specifically, this is about how the bus should move in its own continuous lane, created by repurposing a general lane instead of widening the road. Without its own lane, the bus will get stuck in traffic and be unable to provide frequent and reliable service. This is crucial to achieving the project goals of increasing ridership through reliability, addressing inequities through increased accessibility, and improving safety for everyone. Successful BRT projects do increase transit ridership and can therefore eliminate the need for so many general lanes, allowing Federal to become a people-friendly main street. However, more people will only shift to the bus if it is as fast or faster than driving. This will only happen if the bus moves in its own lane. Additionally, and this is really important, widening the road to accommodate a bus-only lane runs counter to the project's own safety goals and the city's own new priorities. It is well documented that wider roads are more dangerous, especially for people moving outside of cars. So I urge you again to push DOTI and the mayor to exercise their influence on CDOT to give the bus its own lane by repurposing a general lane rather than widening the street. It's time to move boldly to achieve a long-term vision. This project done right is the beginning of a transformation of Denver's transportation system, and through that, the city itself. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you so much, Nam. Nanita, do we have any other public people, anyone else signed up for public comment here?
No, that was the only one.
Okay, thank you. I see a raised hand. Oh, Alan?
Aileen, I want to let you know with the arrival of Amy, and I think I did the math wrong, we are at quorum now, so wanted to let you
I
know
saw
that.
that too. Thank you. So now we can actually move over out of public comment and move back to approving the minutes of our last meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I have a
moved.
point of order, if that's right. I didn't see
Oh,
the
yeah,
minutes.
sure.
I didn't see the minutes from last meeting. I know, Alan, you sent something, but it looked like that was from the month before.
Yeah, I don't think we got the minutes.
Oh.
Yeah, we
Okay.
can work on, maybe if we table that one, perhaps we can work on getting that one again here shortly for you all, Jill. So yeah, Aileen, I'll work on that.
Is anybody else? Is it just me?
You know what? I think you're right. I think it's a good point of order, Joe.
Okay.
I
Thank
didn't
you
get
for
them
bringing that
either,
up and
so,
keeping
Jill.
us. Okay, we're gonna table that for now. But luckily we do have quorum. I know we do have some important conversations to continue to have later on in the meeting. We will work on getting the minutes fully updated. And if we have to push that out to the next meeting, I think that is fine. We can do that at the next meeting if it needs a little bit more time to move forward. Okay, so with that, we're a little bit ahead of schedule. Is Nick available from DOTI Leadership to give our DOTI Leadership report?
is good to see Eileen. Good to see everyone. Thank you, Madam Chair. Few items today, mostly follow-ups from stuff we've discussed before. First, some, I think, very positive news. Met with the organizers of the Santa Fe First Friday event. If you guys remember, gosh, I think it might have been a couple months ago. We felt like we were not making good progress on there, and there was some concern about the event. But I think we've made great progress. Had a very productive meeting with the event organizers, and really, I think came up with a good path forward to put on an event that is both very important to the community and is also very safe for the community as well. I want to give a special shout out to Councilwoman Torres, who joined us and was very helpful in that process on there. So more to come on that, but feel like we are in a much more positive spot than we were just a couple months ago on there. Another item that came up last time, I believe it was last time, on there was a public comment about the outdoor patio space for, I think it was Cerebral Brewing, being taken away to turn back into parking on that, and thought at the time and did confirm that was a zoning requirement for parking minimums. But good news. If that is one of your priorities. The Planning Commission, Alan probably can articulate this better than I can, but the Planning Commission is moving towards getting rid of parking minimums on there. And there's been some good progress on that. And I expect to see, it looks like something by summertime. They are hoping to go through both the zoning process and the ordinance process on that. So just see, you come make a comment on that. We can get rid of parking minimums here. Joking. This is all our partners in CPD on there. Another item went through LUTI committee, the council subcommittee, and then we'll be at council this coming Monday for a contract for the sidewalk program that will get our sidewalk master plan process going and get that up and running. And then also we'll move even as we get through that, it's a 3-year contract. We'll move into some initial design. And so that is, I think, very exciting progress with that. You'll really start to see things flying as we get to the end of that. Of course, we are still continuing to do build out projects that were selected through bonds, as well as do repairs of the worst spot repairs. And I always want to remind folks and tell your neighbors and tell your friends, if you have a damaged sidewalk, snap a photo of that and send it into 311. Right now, of course, we are prioritizing the worst of the worst on there, the real safety hazards on there. But that allows us, especially with that photo, to help prioritize those repairs on there. So progress being made on that. Next thing you'll probably hear, well, we're doing a construction contract that'll probably come in a month or so, but this group will be engaged. We'll want to engage this group on some rules and regs that we would like to do. And if you're not a municipal super wonk, rules and regs are basically kind of rules that a department can promulgate, one of my favorite words on there, that further define and make some clarifications to what's in the ordinance. The ordinance was purposely written broadly on there to allow kind of the department in their expertise to here's how we'll clarify, how we're going to do some of those things. And so that conversation will be coming, and like I said, want to include this group in that as it comes up here in the very near future. I would anticipate in the next month or two. On there. And then lastly, have not forgotten, and just staff has been very busily working on our budget. Our budget season is very intense in the beginning, but on the 2 letters, of course, both the greenways kind of bicycle diverter usage of that, and then as well as the secure storage. I've been meeting with our team, both our planning team on the greenway side, and then our operations team, our street operations team on the secure bike parking, and we will get you guys a formal response to that here. I will target for our next meeting on there, and appreciate everyone's patience on that. I will stop there, Madam Chair. Happy to answer any questions.
Yeah, it looks
try
like we
to.
have at least one question. Thank you, Nicholas, by the way. That was a great update. So Andy, are you ready with your question?
Yeah, hey Nick, and again, maybe probably don't have the answer for this, but On the parking minimums for Cerebral, and since our last meeting, I've also heard there's a bar on South Broadway that's having the same issues, and it sounds like a place in Tennyson as well. Are they enforcing that, knowing that the parking minimums issue is working its way through the process? Although my understanding that is still going to take a while. Are they enforcing it on Cerebral and the others?
My guess is, and I really don't want to speak for CPD and kind of how they're doing it on this, and I've got about an inch's worth of knowledge at this point on it, is that yes, that is the current zoning code on there. So my guess is yes.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Ellen?
I just want to say, Nick, thanks for the feedback loop. I just love it that you're bringing back things that we heard in previous meetings back to us and giving us updates. So kudos and thanks.
Keep us honest.
Great. Joe and then Danielle.
Yeah, Nick, want to ask, thank you for that update. Will there be further updates on the sidewalk program? I understand it's in design and the repairing, but are you going to come up with a schedule sometime this year?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep. We'll work to kind of get that as integrated. Like I would say this is, to me, from where I stand, a non-technical person, this is the real, I feel excited about what we're doing now with getting the master plan going on that. And I fully anticipate and expect Geneva Hooten, I think we've had her previously, to engage this group. And then ultimately, as you guys remember, in the ordinance, this group has in the ordinance is responsible for taking a look at the master plan on there. So even if I didn't want to, you guys are definitely involved in this, but I do want to. I think this group is a very helpful group, and we have a lot of crossover from the folks that were on the amendment committee on there by design. And so, yep, long answer to say, heck yes, Joe, we will be providing more and regular updates.
Nick, you must have been in my emails this week because I had someone from my area of town reach out and ask questions specifically to what you were talking
Nice.
about. So thank you
Good.
for helping me have all the information. Sorry, my dog is trying to join in on this meeting by barking out loud. Danielle and then Tinsley.
Who, Danielle, I cannot hear.
Danielle, maybe restart or like leave and restart and come back. Sometimes that helps. And we'll go with Tinsley and then come back to you. Okay.
I won't go anywhere, Danielle. Yep.
Hi, everyone. How are you guys?
Hello, Tinsley.
Hi. So I wanted to kind of ask a little bit of an update. I'm slightly confused because our councilwoman has offered our some of the promised 11 signals as a potential solution or potential offering to the Vibrant Bond program. And I'm confused, as you can see, because some of those or most of those lights, from what I know, are already bond funded. So maybe, Nicholas, if you can point me in the right direction to determine exactly which ones are tied to a bond and which ones aren't. It's not necessarily always saying that on the website. It just says that it's coming, which is great. We love to know it's coming, but we don't know which is tied, because I feel like, you know, tomorrow when we're doing the Vibrant Bond meeting.
I don't mean to interrupt. Can you say what?
Yeah.
I didn't catch the signal. You said a certain kind of signal, like a promise signal, did you say?
Yes, there's 11 promise. There's 11 promise signals already in Green Valley Ranch area, as far as I know, that have either been promised or put in the queue or are bond funded already, but just haven't been put in. And so I'm just trying to figure out which ones are in question, so that tomorrow during our Vibrant Bond meeting, I am able to decipher how many actual lights still need to be funded.
Yeah.
Yeah, because none of them are out here yet. It's been we're going on again year 2. So we're just kind of wondering, you know, what's happening
Yep.
with these lights. So, Nicholas, if you wouldn't mind shooting me a separate email and just
Yeah.
just kind of letting me know, that would be really great.
And just so I'm clear, what I'm looking for here is what you've heard Councilwoman Gilmore say is that some of she wants to put some of the signals that were previously programmed, probably general fund in there.
Mhm.
She wants
Mhm.
those to instead go to bond on there. But your question is, well,
Mhm.
gosh, it feels like some of those are already in bond. We can't
Correct.
bond them a second time. And basically what you're
Correct.
looking for is the 11 traffic signals, what is to general fund, what is to bond.
Correct. That is exactly right.
Yep. I will do my best to get that to you ASAP, knowing you have a meeting tomorrow.
Nick, do you mind if I hop in real quick?
Please.
Tinsley, also for your helpfulness, I put in a link here, and for anybody listening online that can't see our chat, if you just Google General Obligation Bonds or Go Bonds Denver, you can see links to the 2021 Rise Bond and the 2020 or the 2017 Elevate Denver Bond. And if you look into those, there's a option to look at a map view and a list view of any projects that the city has going on, as well as their
Okay.
status if they're under design, under construction, or completed. So just a great resource for everyone to be aware of on those past bond projects.
I'll take a look at that too. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that resource. Okay, we're gonna give Danielle a second shot. Wait,
Oh.
where'd she go?
Can you hear me now?
There
There.
she is. Yeah, there we go.
Great. Yeah, just wanted to check in, Nick, on the 13th and 14th. I know 13th and 14th avenues becoming 2 ways. I know there was a meeting on that. I think it was maybe 2-3 weeks ago now. And I know some people in the district were looking for that posting of the webinar. I think it was supposed to be posted. The link says it's going to be posted, but we hadn't actually seen it posted yet.
Tracking. So that's the question, because I was like, that did happen, right? But the question is the actual, yep, I can probably get that pretty quick and answer that pretty quick.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, Tinsley, you don't have another question, correct? Just double checking. Sorry, I'm multitasking with one window on my laptop. I think where we're moving to now is we're going to be doing a project update. Oh, no. We're doing the bike, the bike share. I gotta pull up my agenda. Sorry, I was looking at a few things.
You're right, Aileen, shared mobility update.
Yeah, shared mobility update. Thank you. This is the problem with having a laptop. I cannot have multiple screens open at once. Okay, shared mobility update. Who from DOTI is presenting to us today? Nathan, there he is. Thank you so much. I'm gonna hand the reins over to you, Nathan.
Great. Great to be with you all. Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you. My name is Nathan Pope. I'm a senior city planner with the Department of Transportation and Infrastructure, and here to give an update on the shared bike and scooter program. Give me a holler if my screen's not coming through. I call it the shared bike and scooter program. We used to call it the shared micromobility program, but bike and scooter is a little bit more descriptive, so that's what we're sticking with for now. Want to give you guys an overview of kind of the program, where we're at, what are our current activities, looking forward towards the future, and then save a lot of time for questions and conversations. I'm really interested to hear y'all's priorities moving forward. Why is this an important time to talk about this topic? Well, we have 2 agreements with Lime and Bird, and those agreements are coming to an end. We have 5-year contracts. Those will be up about this time next year. So we have about 1 year left on those contracts, and we're preparing for a process to recompete those. You'll hear me say recompete, right? So we're putting out the contract again, recompeting it. So really want to hear from you all what your priorities are, what you're most interested in, what you think is working great, what you want to see change, and then have a conversation about that. starting off with a program overview, I think folks have fond memories of B-Cycle 2010 to 2019, had some significant public investment and got up to 700 bikes, almost 90 docking stations, and then unfortunately shut down. Right at the same time, there was scooters fell from the sky. You might have remembered, this is 2018-ish. Scooters descended from the sky, and we quickly put together a mobility pilot program to see how these vehicles would fit into the Denver landscape. We had 5 scooter operators, 2 bike operators, and we learned quite a bit. That led to the formal program that we're in today, the 2021 license agreements. We had a competitive process. We selected 2 operators, Lime and Lyft. Lyft is now transitioned to be Bird, and they provide about 7,000 dockless e-bikes and e-scooters in the public right-of-way. In exchange from that, we received this mobility service that people get access to, and we have extensive equity and corral building requirements. And like I mentioned, those are 5-year agreements, and we're getting towards the end of them. Why do we like this program? Well, it's supporting a lot of our city goals. It's expanding our transportation options. It's a relatively affordable option, and we have really strong equity programs. It's really replacing car trips as well. We have really good data to show this is creating mode shift, giving people that option to get out of their cars. And it's great to connect to transit as well, that first last mile connection. And then also this idea of a last minute connection where maybe you could walk that distance, but you're running late to catch your bus, and this can get you there a little bit quicker. We've seen huge growth in the program. So the red bars show where B-Cycle was at, and they were doing 500,000 trips in a month, or in a year, and we can do that in a month on the shared bike and scooter program these days. And so you can see that truly huge growth in the program over the past couple of years. We hit 6.6 million trips in a single year in 2024 and continue that trend. Where are folks riding? This is an animation, so hopefully it comes through for you all. You can see from June 21 to June 24, the growth of the program. It really started off as a downtown program, and we still see about 25% of trips happening near the downtown core, but the rest have spread out, and the growth is really happening in the rest of the city. We saw a single day record of nearly 40,000 trips in a single day this past summer. I'll pause the animation. You can see the overall graph. Chart. And then I know you guys are by council district, so I did a little analysis to look at council district as well. And you can see even some of our more districts that are farther away from the core still have plenty of ridership. How far are people riding? It's a little under a mile. It depends on the day and the trip type and if they're on a scooter or a bike, but it's about 0.8 miles, and the time of the year. The weather is a big factor as well. But plenty of folks who are riding over 5 miles as well. And then folks are most likely riding in the afternoons or on the weekends. Ridership is spread all over at all times. We have people riding at 6 a.m. and 6 p.m., but it is a little bit more concentrated in the afternoon. We find it for those afternoon spontaneous errands or happy hours or shopping trips. It's really popular for those. I mentioned the equity programs earlier. There's 2 big components to our equity programs. The first is the opportunity areas. Those are those geographic areas that you can see on the map here where we have deployment requirements. So left to their own devices, the operators would most likely put the devices in the highest ridership areas. This is a way to make sure that they're more equitably distributed throughout our city. And about 20% of trips end in these areas, which we're seeing some growth in as well. That's one part. The second part is the needs-based passes. So if you're income qualified, you can ride for free or near free on these devices. You get qualified through any state or federal benefit like Medicaid or SNAP, and you could sign up through those processes. And we've seen huge growth in those programs, particularly around the Lime Access program of folks riding at very, very, very low cost or free. One of the big things we always like to talk about with this program, one of the pain points often is parking, where folks leave them. These are dockless, right? B-Cycle used to have docks. These devices are dockless. So where do people park? And we've spent a lot of time over the past couple of years making sure people have a designated place to park. So they don't have to just park on the side in the tree lawn and the amenity zone, but they have designated places to park. We've really been focusing our efforts in the areas where there's the highest ridership, where the most is going on. And as you suspect, that's downtown. And we've really evolved our thinking. We started with putting them above the curb, right? We found some extra space on the sidewalk. We'd put a box there and say, hey, you should park in this box. Our thinking has changed a lot where now we want them below curb. We really want to avoid sidewalk riding. And the best way to do that is to make sure the corrals are on the street level, not the sidewalk level. So you'll see going forward, almost the majority of our corrals are below the curb on the street level. We've also had a lot of success in combining them with our protected bike lanes. So providing daylighting at the corners so that it's a safety improvement. People can cross and you can have easier sight lines with the vehicle traffic, and then you never have to get up to the sidewalk. So a couple images here, you can see what these corrals are looking like these days. We have over 290 installed, and we're doing a lot of testing, but our goal in the highest ridership area is to have a corral every 1 to 2 blocks. That's kind of what best practice from the industry states, and we're getting close to that in a lot of areas. I do have another little animation. This is just from opening day this past weekend, or this past Friday, and you can see, you're in the bike lane and then you pull over into the parking area, and then you're never on the sidewalk with a scooter. And I think this is really what we're trying to get to. The best way to get to this is to provide those parking corrals. And just to give you a real quick hit, this is where the corrals are. This is map's a little out of date, but you can also see those darker hexagons. That's where the highest ridership is. So we're trying to match the parking corrals where we have the highest ridership. We just completed a community survey to ask folks about what their opinions are on the program, and this is really to help it inform those recompete efforts. We had huge response. We had 2,500 respondents, and we heard some really interesting things. I will link to the full survey results if you're interested in diving in, but some of the top line takeaways are these are a crucial part of our transportation system. They're not just for fun. They work for fun, but they're also a crucial part. And they replace car trips. And we see that quite a high percent. We also surveyed non-riders, people who don't use the system, and we had a really good feedback from them as well. They're definitely interested in policies around unsafe scooter behavior, improper parking, and reducing sidewalk riding, which is what we've been focused on. And then cost was another thing that came up as well, that folks identified that expanding and lowering the cost of the program would encourage more people to ride. So this is the big takeaway. Happy to dive into any of these. I'll save time at the end for conversation. And the survey results, you can see all the numbers and the data behind it in a PDF that I'll link at the end. One thing that I wanted to call out, we asked folks, what do they use the scooters for, and found that transit connection. So 43% of folks use it to connect to transit, and 51% of folks use it when public transit is not feasible or they feel it's not feasible. We also asked, are you a regular rider or a more infrequent rider or a non-rider? And we found that folks who are a regular rider, meaning weekly or more often, are more likely to use it to get to work and more likely to use it to get to healthcare appointments and schools. We also asked folks who don't ride what their biggest concerns were, and they noted them as dangerous riding, sidewalk riding, and misparked scooters were their top 3 priorities there, which is what we've heard anecdotally. It's good to see it reconfirmed in the survey. I mentioned mode shift a couple of times, and we asked folks, hey, if you had not been able to use a scooter, if a scooter wasn't around for your last trip, how would you have made that trip? Would you have not ridden at all, or how would you have gotten there? And 50% of people said that they would have driven, either themselves, or a lot of them said they would take Uber or Lyft or a ride hail. And so I think that's a really important number for us when we're looking at the potential for these to get people out of their cars, have a transportation option that works well for them, that's convenient and reliable. People are seeing that with the scooter program. Okay, now that's kind of what's happening in the past, and now looking a little bit more towards the future. We're doing a lot with council coordination, where Councilmember Hines is interested in updating the legislation around the shared bike and scooter program. We're working closely with him. He's most interested in those challenges that I mentioned before, reducing sidewalk riding and improving parking. And so we're working closely with him on timing and coordination to make sure that legislation fits into our timeline for recompeting the license agreements. And he's planning to bring that to hopefully to the Land Use and Transportation Committee sometime this month. And so we're staying really close coordination with him. His co-sponsors are Councilmember Watson and Parity. Those 2 top priorities, reducing sidewalk riding and improving proper parking. We're also doing some technology tests around that. Technology is, we all want it to be the silver bullet that solves all of our problems, but at the end of the day, it's not. It's a layered approach, but we do want to stay abreast and understand what the technology can and can't do. One of those things is around parking. So we have a mandatory parking zone that we've just established last month. It's kind of in the area behind Union Station, Commons Park, Platt Street. in that area. And here you won't be able to end your trip unless you're in a designated parking corral. So elsewhere in the city, you can end your trip and they'll have you take a photo of it. And as long as that photo looks okay, you're able to end your trip. But here you have to be in one of those parking corrals. So we added an extra corrals to make sure it was convenient and easy for folks. So we have over 20 corrals in the area now, really with that goal of getting one per block and making sure that no one has to walk more than 1 to 2 minutes. So we'll be evaluating that over the next couple months and see how well it's working, with the potential to expand it to other parts of the city. We've also begun collecting sidewalk riding data. So each scooter has a different suite of sensors on it, whether it's cameras, gyroscopes, all these different things. And they do their best to guess if a scooter rider is on a sidewalk or not. And we're collecting that data, trying to understand where the hotspots are so we can do some targeted enforcement. That's data that we just started collecting at the beginning of this year, now that the technology is becoming a bit more widespread. That brings me to my last couple slides here, the recompete process. So as we look to the future into 26, we've been talking to a lot of folks. We've been talking to community members, RNOs, stakeholders, city council, been talking a lot to industry, what other cities are doing. There's a lot of good lessons learned from peer cities, and talking about everything under the sun related to this program that we can look to copy from peer cities, learn what the best practices are, hear from our community members what's working and what's not, and that'll all go into this new program. You can see the timeline down on the bottom. If I zoom in on that a little bit, you can see we're getting close to 2026. What's been going on over the past year is we've done the survey, we've done a bunch of community engagement, we're doing those technology field tests, and now we're moving into scope development, where we're going to be putting together a request for proposals, an RFP for new vendors that should come out this summer to ask them to rebid on the program. So we're developing the scope now. Now is the time to talk about these things. So really glad to be with you all right now. Once we put out that RFP, we'll go into procurement and we'll go into award and negotiation towards the end of this year, before a council vote happens early next year, February-ish time frame. And then we have a little bit of a transition time before the new agreements start. So we have a long runway, but it's going to take us a long time to get through this procurement process. That's my last slide. I open it up to you all now for questions, comments, feedback, because I'm really interested to hear what your priorities are, what's working well, what's not, and happy to answer any questions. The link down there, we just updated our webpage with the survey results and some safe riding information. So encourage you and all of your everybody on the call to check out that website.
Great. Thank you so much, Nathan. We have a couple advisory board members that have questions. We'll start with Joe and then Tinsley after Joe.
Okay, I had basically two questions. Is what are you hearing from vendors? Are they eager to apply, or do they want to change rules, or have you? I mean, you must have reached out to them. Do you think anything will change with the new vendors?
I would say the industry has changed quite a bit since we last did this, right? Over the past 5 years, there's a lot less venture capital money out there. There's a little bit more, it's a little bit more of a lean industry now. And there's fewer vendors overall. There's been a lot of consolidation. Been keeping close tabs on all the vendors out there, had some good conversations. I think they're all very interested in Denver and what the future holds here.
Okay, and my second question is, I mean, I ride my bicycle a lot, and I see these see them lying all over the place, sometimes in remote areas. Is there any penalty or anything like that on this program if you kind of leave it in the middle of a sidewalk or something? Or how is that handled when that happens?
Yeah, so that's definitely something that we're having conversations about. Right now, there's a couple of different mechanisms. The first is you take a photo at the end of your trip, and that photo shows, hey, I parked properly. Those photos are being reviewed by the vendor staff. Not every photo is reviewed, but they're reviewing a good chunk of them, and then they can levy fines against them if they're egregiously misparked. We're also exploring technology that is not just a photo, it's a scan. So you park the device and then you kind of scan your environment, and it gets a real-time understanding of where it is, and it cuts out that middle process, and it says, hey, you're parking and blocking the sidewalk. You can't park here. We're not going to let you end your trip until you correct. And so that's something that is being slowly deployed here. And I think is something we're excited about in the future, to really just make it sure you can't park incorrectly, right? You have to park correctly. That combined with the mandatory parking zone. So exploring a lot of these technologies, really, we have to have the designated place for folks to park as the key part of that. That just makes it easy for folks. So everything's on the table right now, and we're looking into the technologies.
Well, I will say that, and this is the last point, I work in Rhino, and it looks like over the past couple of weeks, bikes are much better corralled and all that. So I've seen real improvements in the area with bike parking. So whatever you've done, kudos on that. Thank you.
Love to hear it. Thanks for the question.
Tinsley?
Yes, it's interesting just you know, talking from one side of the city to the other. We have a very same but not the same kind of problem with these bikes. So we're in a rural area, so or I would call this a little bit more rural. But there's a lot of land and space between different activities, and the exact same problem is happening where people are just leaving bikes and scooters. However, in Green Valley Ranch area, there is no station. There is no dock station. There is no place to even like pick up a bike from. You know how some of them are in that pretty little line? We don't have that. So whatever bikes and scooters that we are getting are coming from other places, I'm assuming, because we don't really even have that capability, although it would be nice because there are substantially more apartment buildings here now, and people want to get around and go to the grocery store that's just without walking distance. The next thing I wanted to talk about, and this is actually more a very road specific and kind of double jointed concern. So around a lot of the schools here, I have noticed that there has been an increase in more bike lanes, which is awesome. And I know we're getting some more improvements. I believe down Green Valley Ranch, it's one of the two bigger roads. We're redoing that whole bike lane, which is also awesome. But one of the things that we have found out here is when it comes to the schools still, there is real no bike access to safely get to school with a bike. What I mean by that is, for instance, Omar D. Blair is kind of on a very narrow street, and you will have to have a sidewalk to participate with a bike to get to that school. But there's also, because the road is so narrow, there's a lot of safety concerns with parents parking and moving during pickup and drop off. Same with Highland Academy, now that Maxwell Street is going all the way through from, I believe it would be Tower Road, all the way through that neighborhood, all the way out to the other side of Maxwell. Cars are going substantially faster down that curve, and it is very unsafe for kids to bike that distance to get to Highline Academy, where it should be easier to get there by bike. I know we did have some safe routes to schools improvements at Highline Academy, which is awesome. Especially parents and staff are really appreciative that they can now walk across the street safely because of those improvements. But we still do not have a proper bike lane in that area for students and staff to feel safe to bike in that area. So I just want to bring those two things up. Thank you, guys.
Thanks so much for that. To your initial point around Green Valley Ranch and kind of scooter access and shared bike access out there, we've certainly seen a kind of organic growth where it's coming more and more, and we're seeing more in that area every day, every month. And so I think it's something that definitely interested in. We have the opportunity areas, which are those geographic areas where they are required to deploy 30% of the fleet into. And I think we're going to be looking at updating that map. So this is good timing to hear that feedback. Have certainly talked to the Safe Routes to School team about school access. particularly around shared bikes and scooters. But I will definitely pass on the feedback that improvement was appreciated, and we can continue the conversation about bike access to those schools as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just use the chair's privilege to say what a great tool the Safe Routes to School program is in that not only building up infrastructure for kids to use scooters or bikes to get to school, or I've seen rollerblading in front of my house too. But it's also obviously adults can use that infrastructure when they're going about their daily activities too. Okay, next comments, Gary, and then after Gary, Alan.
Thanks. Nathan, that was like drinking from a fire hose. So can you provide us your PowerPoint presentation so that at times we could probably take a little more time to digest everything
Absolutely.
that you addressed in it? That was the first thing. The second thing is that I'm trying to understand who pays for the service. Now, I know that you charge per trip to the rider, but you also mentioned a couple other discounted programs. So are you asking at all for a budget line item in the DOTI budget? And how much would that be?
We are not asking for great question, and I can definitely send the PowerPoint. We're not asking for any line item currently in the DOTI budget. This is a third party that provides these, and they make their revenue off of the rides. So we are not currently, and we let them do that. So we're not asking for any budget from currently. Does that answer your question?
Well, yeah, it does. The first part. Second part is so I understand it's completely revenue neutral. There's no income, nor is there no expense.
Correct.
Except for possibly taking parking away and providing some of the infrastructure. Who pays for that?
So the operators create the parking corrals. That's the agreement we have today, is that Lime and Bird build the parking corrals for the devices. We also have city corrals that we build that we make sure are agnostic and you can park your personal bike or your personal scooter there. They have U-racks in them. So both operators are required to build a certain amount of corrals as part of this agreement. And then we complement that with city corrals. And I see Nick, if he wants to.
Yeah, thank you, Nathan. Yeah, and Gary, just to clarify, when we say revenue neutral, that's from just like a dollars exchanging hands back and forth. When we designed this program, we very specifically designed it, say, we will not charge you, company, a fee. Instead, what we want you to do is provide us, and what you will bid on is how many free and discounted rides, both for low-income folks and not low-income folks, how many of those free rides will you provide? And that's basically one of the main factors on how the two folks were chosen. So there's even a Westward article today that talks about it. I think Lime is on upwards of $20-something million on those free to Denver residents rides on there. But that gets conflated a lot. There's like, gosh, you're just giving them a free ride here on the city to run these great programs on there. And you can ask them and they will say it absolutely is not free on that. So just wanted to make sure that was clear.
Okay. I got really one last question. You commented on the percent of the trips being taken on these scooters and bikes. That it was about 40% of those trips were commuter type trips. I think that was one of your slides that said that. It went pretty quickly, but could you clarify that? Plus, how many trips does that actually equate to? And then kind of the last complicated little question is how do you normalize that over a complete year? Because weather is such a contributing factor to whether or not I ride a scooter or not. And so how big of an impact truly can you make in a normalized kind of conversation? Can you address that?
No, appreciate those questions. So jump back to this slide here. I think I'm still sharing. We asked folks, where do you use your scooters to access? And you'll see two numbers where it says get to work. 40% were all riders. And then we zoom in, we asked folks, are you a regular rider? Do you ride every week? Or do you ride less frequently? And so when we asked those folks specifically, we pulled out the folks who were riding weekly or more. 61% of them said that they were using it to get to work. So of the
Okay.
folks who are riding the most, they are frequently using it to get to work. Of everybody who's riding, it's only about 40%. So more of the folks who aren't riding as often. The full data is in the there's a PDF with all the data in it, and I'm happy to include that in when I send over the PowerPoint as well.
Okay.
And then weather, I think, is a great question as well. It certainly is seasonal and depends on the weather. I will say we, even on the coldest, snowiest days, we still have 1,000 folks who are riding, even on the coldest days. And so we think this is important, right? These folks are riding because they are not just out there for fun; they have some place to be. And so we try to look at all of our data on an annual basis to account for those different trends around weather. So when I'm looking at trends, I'm certainly looking at year over year as opposed to just the past couple of months.
Yeah. Sounds thorough. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Nathan. Just for a point of order, I added a link to the Westward article that Nick was referencing into the chat for the DOTI advisory board, and to our listeners, our attendees, you can Google it. It's on the front page of the Westward today. Just have to scroll down a little bit. Alan and then Julie.
Nathan, thanks for coming. This is really cool data to share with us, and I'm really excited to nerd out on the more in-depth version of it that you mentioned. What are the most common destinations? And I'm sure it's different for folks that live in downtown versus in elsewhere, but out here, I see a lot of kids going to schools. I mean, do you all have a anonymized idea of where people are going for these appointments in terms of like, not what part of the city, but more so like, is it grocery stores? Is it shopping? Is it bars, restaurants? What are the places that people are using these trips for?
Yeah, it's tough to get at because we get a lot of good data from it, but we just know where the anonymized trip ends. We don't know that they went to the grocery store that's here or the medical center that's here right next to it. So we are making some guesses there. We certainly see a lot of RTD stations pop out there. We see a lot of our shelters for unhoused folks as well. That's a popular destination. And when we asked the survey respondents, the number one thing was to eat out. Folks like to use it to go frequent our businesses and our restaurants. Another one that we haven't talked about all is events, large events. So be it a opening day this past weekend, a Broncos game, a parade, a protest, people are absolutely using these. And I think that's great because parking is always the challenge when you're trying to get a lot of people into a small area, and this is a vehicle that's really space efficient. So it's a wide variety of things. People are using them for anything and everything. The number one thing though is to access to go out to eat.
That's awesome. Parking in terms of concerns I hear from our neighborhood over here in Northwest Denver on the north side, parking on the sidewalks, similar to what you saw, is the big one. Is there any transparency to the city as to, how many fines have been levied either in the current contract or, transparency into of the 311 requests that come in? How are those resolved? Can you help me understand some of the ideas around current mitigation or future mitigation of that, in addition to the corrals that you mentioned before?
Yeah, so we get all the 311 data, so we understand kind of that frequency. I don't want to rely on that data solely because there's certainly misparked scooters that are not reported to 311. If something does come into 311, the operators have roughly 2 hours to get that corrected, and they're within their 2-hour window about 95% of the time. They will correct that misparked scooter within 2 hours of it being reported to them. Ideally, it's not misparked in the first place. And so I think that's why we're looking at some of those technology and corral initiatives to make sure that it doesn't get misparked in the first place. But we do get the 311 data. We're also looking at maybe some other data sources for the new contract as well. I don't have any data on how the operators are fining. I know it does happen for repeat users and they can get kicked off the system, but I don't have any strong data for that.
Yeah, so that might be a request for a future program is maybe a little bit more transparent on that side of things if it's not something that's readily available. And then last question, you mentioned targeted enforcement on some of the hot spots on sidewalks. Are you working with the mobility planning team in terms of cross-referencing? We're seeing people riding on the sidewalks, but there's also not a safe, protected bike lane, or there's a painted bike lane here, but people might feel comfortable using it. Also, maybe working in tandem, looking at potential infrastructure upgrades in addition to enforcement.
Absolutely. I don't think we're going to rely on enforcement, at least in the short term. Engagement is what we've talked about, or outreach, having some signage out there and in the hotspots. Certainly want to use this data for planning purposes. It's really valuable for that, to say, hey, there's a lot of folks riding here. They're all riding on the sidewalk. Why are they doing that? Most likely because there's not a good alternative. And so understanding where that's happening, or maybe there is a bike lane there and people are still riding on the sidewalk for some reason. So that's really valuable for us to know. We've just started to collect this data, so I can't promise too much in the short term. It's not every device is collecting it. It's a percentage of the fleet, but we're starting to get that picture of where sidewalk riding is happening, where those hotspots are.
Awesome. Thank you again for coming. This is really exciting stuff.
Yeah.
Hey, right now our last question is Julie, and I'll just point of order. We do have enough time if someone else has a question. So,
Well, great. I have two questions. So one is when you said that the companies have to build like parking corrals and stuff, and when they do that, if for some reason they didn't win the bid, do we get to keep those? They don't get to take them down, or does that become the property of our city once they build it?
It's always our property. We permit them to use it. And then the infrastructure that's inside it, oftentimes it's a painted box, so there's not too much infrastructure that's being lost. But the future is we've been talking about moving towards a more agnostic, where it's not a bird corral or a lime corral. It's just a parking corral. You can park any type of scooter in there, and they're a little bit more city focused assets. So it is something that we're keeping an eye on during a transition. If we end up with different vendors, what does that mean? And so I appreciate you raising it here. We want to make sure that we don't lose any ground with any type of transition.
And then my second question is you were talking about you could take a photo, and I wasn't clear. Were you talking about that the rider takes a photo to prove that they left it somewhere, or is an annoyed wheelchair user on a sidewalk, can I take a photo? And because I know with snow removal, 311 is kind of a pain because they want an exact address, and you're never going to get that with these, because they're at City of Nairobi Park, they're all over the park, all over the sidewalks around the park. It's not in front of a specific place. So how would that work if you wanted to take pictures, and how do you get it to 311?
Yeah. The first part, when a user ends the ride, when I finish my scooter ride, I have to take a picture of where I parked it, right? So that's on record. Now, if I did a bad job of parking and you come across it, you can submit that via 311, or we have a separate form. It's a drop down in 311. You say where it is, and you have the option of adding a photo to that, and then that gets passed on to us and to the operators, and then they have 2 hours to come and fix it. We're definitely looking at making it easier to report. I think we've heard some feedback that it's a little cumbersome, kind of like what you said, to get the exact address to report them. It's a fine line between having too much information and too little information. We want to make sure that they have enough information where they know where it is to correct it. And so we're trying to find a better balance there. But reporting is definitely a part of the current program and something that will continue into the future.
So you do or do not need an exact address?
Right now, you need to give us an address. As long as you're close enough to it, they'll find it. But you do have to provide some sort of address. Yeah.
So you couldn't say it's on 36th Avenue in between these two streets on the west side.
I believe you can give a cross street instead, but they need some kind of geographic information. Right. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you can't just say it's somewhere in Denver, but the exact address is really a barrier. And then you do need to take a picture with that. When
you used to, we're trying to update. I think it's been updated so where you don't have to take a photo anymore, because we heard that was a barrier for folks. It's always better if we have a photo so we can find out where it is and make sure and verify everything. But heard that was a barrier for folks, so I think we're moving that to optional. but appreciate the feedback on the exact address being cumbersome.
Yeah. Okay. No, thanks. I didn't know that you could do that. I will start reporting them.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll leave it there.
Great, thank you so much. Really good questions. Okay, June took me up on the challenge for another question. June.
I can always think of questions. So, hey, Nathan, thank you for the presentation. I did see, first of all, in the presentation, the Broadway bike lane showed up on the map of trip locations, which I thought was cool.
Absolutely.
One question potentially. I know I had a conversation, or we heard, or somehow I remember from months back asking about geofencing to someone somewhere, and hearing that geofencing to keep people from riding on sidewalks is kind of unfeasible as a technology. Are there other technologies that vendors are talking about or have been developing that can address sidewalk riding or can address things like, I don't know, close passing someone, for example? Is that something that is being floated by vendors? And my second sort of follow-on question is, if vendors are starting to drop out of this sort of shared program entirely, is there any consideration or conversation by DOTI about completely in-housing the program so that we're sort of a little bit more insulated from the whims of venture capital?
Yeah, to the first thing about first question about technology, I think the operators, the scooter operators will certainly say they have technology, right? They're going to tell you, sidewalk riding technology has been coming the next 3 months for the past 3 years. And so I think it's always risky to not see it on the ground. And so we've started to see the first iteration of that where it's guessing if it's on the sidewalk. It's not accurate 100% of the time. Maybe it's 80% accurate that it thinks it's on the sidewalk, but it's improving. And I think, maybe in a couple of years, it gets to the point where it's 99, 100% accurate. And then we can explore things like, hey, audible detections. Hey, you're on the sidewalk, get off the sidewalk. Or other things like, hey, you're on the sidewalk, we're going to slow you down if you don't get off the sidewalk. That technology is, depending on who you ask, 6 to 3 years away. And so I think we can't rely on it right now. And if it's not perfect, the worst case scenario is someone's riding properly in the bike lane and they go through an intersection and it thinks they're on the sidewalk and they get slowed down improperly. And so I think there's definitely safety concerns there. So I think my big takeaway here is that technology can work. It's hard for it to be perfect, and so we're testing it here to understand, not trusting what anybody's selling, but we want to test it here first. And so that's what we're starting to do. And then about resiliency for the program, we originally picked 2 vendors for that exact reason. And I think that's kind of paid off, right? Where Lyft decided that they are no longer interested in doing dockless devices anywhere in the country, and we were one of their markets. They were able to work with Bird to have them come in a pretty seamless transition, but that's not always going to be the case. That being said, I think they're not reliant on venture capitalism as much, venture capitalist funds as much anymore. They are seemingly making a profit and self-sustaining. So I think that is a good positive sign. I think we've certainly talked about what it would mean to bring it in-house, and I think what it would mean is a lot of money. It would cost a lot to do that, probably tens of millions of dollars to get the same level of benefit that we're getting today, and a lot of staffing to help match that. So I don't think that's in the short-term cards, but appreciate you raising it, and we're something we're thinking about as well.
In that case, is the rebid, are we going to be looking at 2 contractors again?
I think everything's up for conversation right now. Certainly looking at what the different pros and cons are of having more, fewer, or the same operators.
Okay, because definitely in my mind, right, I want to provide a continuity of service for users.
Yeah.
So any way that y'all can figure out about, like, well, of course, improving the program over what it is right now, because obviously it's seeing some successes with a few pain points, but also just in my mind, making sure that, especially looking to the future, and the future right now when it comes to this sort of thing is pretty uncertain, just making sure that this program has some resilience and redundancies and stopgaps built in on the contract side just to make sure that like if we do see some amount of disruptions, that this program is hopefully insulated from it. I mean, I will say I'm a big fan of this program. I've never used it personally, but I think it's a great program. And also, just looking at this map, I love how like the 12th Avenue also pokes out as a highly used route, which I think is fun, which definitely matches with my personal experience using 12th Avenue a lot. But I got no other greater questions. And also on the agenda, 40 minutes was allocated for this. And but it said the end time was 5:15 instead of 5:05, which it should have been by the math. So technically speaking, if you do the math correctly, we are at time.
That was my fault. I can't do math well.
It's okay, Alan. I can do math.
I didn't double check him because I was coming back from Europe when the agenda was created. So thank you, June. And actually, it sounds like we've exhausted the questions from the advisory board anyway. So Nathan, thank you so much for a great presentation. I really appreciated how much information you were able to share and letting us kind of poke you with all the questions that we wanted to dive into more deeply. I appreciate that. With that, we're going to move on to our District 4 update. I'm not sure who is presenting from DOTI.
It's me. It's Molly Lampier.
Yay. Thank you, Molly, for being ready.
No
Okay, I'm going to hand it
problem.
over to you.
Okay, well, we'll see how ready I am when I try. Hold on, let me try and share. Are you guys seeing my slides yet? No.
Not yet, just your face.
Okay, hold on. Let me do this the other way. Share. Sorry, it's always
Oh, you're fine.
great. Oh, why am I doing? Okay, hold on. Sorry. I want to share this screen. Give me a second. Here we go. Share. Okay, and hopefully you're seeing my screen
working.
now. Okay, and now let's just go to do it. There we go. Okay. So I'm Molly Lampier. I've seen you guys before because I also do districts 5 and 6, but tonight I'm going to talk about District 4, which, as you know, is the most southeast part of Denver, and what we got going on. So for 2025, the active construction projects are a couple things on the Highline Canal, which are the Dahlia and where the Highline crosses Dahlia and Yale Holly-ish. We have, that's all kind of a bundled project right there. And Dahlia, we're kicking off a little sooner than the Yale one, even though we've done some utility work already on the Yale one. But the Dahlia one is also like a bridge replacement. We're looking at some traffic calming along there. So that's really exciting. And then as well in that kind of similar area of Yale, there will be some RRFBs going in. Hopefully that's pretty soon coming up here in the coming months, sometime most likely over the summer, where you'll see it will be much easier to get into like Bible Park is where they're scheduled to be. And then we also are kicking off this year the Hamden Multimodal Project, and we're going through contracting right now. I probably won't officially start construction or anything like that till later this year. And that really has, because of funding, it really is mostly pedestrian improvements, such as like bulb outs and crossings and sidewalk repairs, things like that along Hamden. And then we're also getting a new signal. Again, that should happen, I believe, pretty soon if it hasn't already, on Quincy and Syracuse. And if it hasn't already, it's going to happen this summer. It's part of a package of signals, so I'm not quite sure where it lands in the...
It hasn't started yet because I live about a few minute walk there.
Great. Well, you'll have to let me
now
know.
I know.
but we
Yeah.
bundle it, so I don't quite know where it is in the bundle. But that is happening as well this year. So that's a lot of stuff actually. And then the design stuff that we have going on, and I probably talked about this, I think when I talked about, I know when I talked about District 5, because this borders, but just wanted to give you an update and let you know that Bucktail multimodal improvements, which is right by University of Denver, from like Colorado to University, is getting a number of improvements. This also includes some pedestrian, but we are doing signals, intersections, RFBs. Really, it's going to be really nice and lovely. And that is in design, finalizing design, and construction is not set to happen until 2026. So there's that one. And then I just have one more slide, and then I'm happy to open it up to questions, which are planning projects. And so I'm sure, I hope that you guys all know about the Evans Avenue corridor. And that study was completed, and now we're just looking for implementation there. And so I know there were some big ideas, small ideas, and hope to see funding there for implementation in the next few years. But that is a completed plan, which is the first step, as you know, into implementation. So, and then something that is sat on kind of the shelf for a while because it involves different municipalities, and we have been asked by Councilwoman Romero Campbell to kind of pick it back up and see what Denver can do, is the I-25 and Bellevue Avenue interchange. So this study was done a number of years ago, but just wanted to put it back on you all radars as it's back on ours. And I don't know implementation wise what may happen here, but we are having conversations moving forward on that. So with that, happy to take questions. I'm going to exit out of my screen so I can see you guys and maybe stop sharing here so you can see me.
Well, Joe, I'm going to ask about the interchange first, and then I'll hand it over to you. So I do remember those conversations about the I-25 and Bellevue interchange. I just really quickly, to bring the rest of the advisory board up to speed, and Molly, please correct me if I
No,
misstate
please.
anything.
You probably have more
But
history than I do, so please
I
speak to it.
know. I'm going to try to explain it super briefly, but
Yeah.
basically, because it is in the far southeast corner, if you guys don't travel to Southeast Denver very often, you might not realize that this is a interchange or potential interchange at the intersection of I-25 and Bellevue. And there's been some discussion about adding or moving an additional entry point to
Yeah.
I-25 up basically the next big corridor north of Bellevue, which I think is not Quincy, Union.
You're right.
Union. And there was some pushback in the neighborhood and in the community about that, because there was there wasn't a ton of excitement from pedestrian bicycle community that uses Union pretty robustly as part of the network down there. And that would, if we added an interchange at I-25 and Union, as I think Greenwood Village was pushing, it would really wipe out that bicycle infrastructure. I mean, if anything else had to be added, it would look a lot different. Let's just say that. So now I don't know how much you could answer, but I have to ask, what does it mean that you're studying this again? Like
we're not
and what
studying
happened?
it again.
Where did it end, I guess?
Yeah, so it ended at impasse, from my understanding, between us and
surprised.
Greenwood Village. And yeah, and it may again, we're not sure. We're not redoing a study. We're picking up the study and saying, is there anything here that we can revisit now that we do have I think there's been change of leadership with Greenwood Village. I think there's, a new administration with us, a new
Okay.
councilwoman with us. So it's
Got
more
it.
of just probably rehabbing an old conversation, but recognizing that there is a need here. So to
What is the need again? Is it vehicles
Mhm.
to enter I-25
Yes. Yeah. So,
in
but I
Greenwood
think,
Village?
yeah, and I probably, brought this up very prematurely just to give you guys an FYI
Okay, I
and
appreciate the heads
remind
up.
you, because to be honest, there's no this is not going forward to construction at this point. It is just
Sure.
conversations.
Molly, I could add a little if you want.
Yeah,
That would be
please.
helpful.
Oh,
Yeah,
hi,
no,
Nick.
hello. Eileen, yeah, this is,
Yeah, Nick.
Councilwoman Romero Campbell's predecessor, Councilwoman Black. This was very much something we worked with quite a bit, and then Councilwoman Romero Campbell certainly has taken up the mantle. And what you said, and kind of that, the damage, or just making that Union bike lane less safe has been kind of our priority going through this.
Okay,
As
thank
in
you.
a priority, not doing something that's going to make it less safe, to be clear, on there, and it's a very different road, and it's been a lot of discussions with, working with the Metro District down there, with Greenwood Village. Of course, CDOT is involved because it involves the state highway, on there. And yeah, that has really been kind of our North Star, is that we're not going to do something that damages the safety of that bike lane going across. But we recognize kind of the needs and desires of Greenwood Village, and we're happy to continue to look for something that kind of gets some of what they're looking for without damaging Union, on there. So those
Okay.
have been the conversations. They're ongoing. Molly
Yeah.
said it. We've done a lot of studying
Yeah.
with this, trying to find something. But to this point, I mean, yeah, that is not the path is the same, on there for us.
Well, I
Thank you, Nick.
appreciate a lot hearing that North Star comment about
Yeah.
Union. I think if that is helping guide your conversations, that makes me feel a lot better. Because I certainly understand how complicated it is. But if there's a North Star like that, I know that
Yep.
I can trust you guys. I mean, I trust you anyway, but you know what I mean.
But verify.
Okay. Sorry, I had to ask that question. Okay,
No,
Joe, and then
please. And
June.
yeah, please.
Yeah, well, Eileen, thank you. And thank you very much, Molly, for the presentation. I know, Eileen, it's your district, but I'm in it riding my bike about 3 of the 4 times a week. So first of all, I will say that Union is really the best way to get to Cherry Creek Reservoir. So
Yeah.
that's really
Yeah.
what's going on there. And of course, the less traffic, the better. But my question, Molly, is any more information on what I consider one of the worst crossings in the city, which is Evans and Birch, which is to get over to, and there's no sidewalk there. I mean, there is, but half the time if there's snow and everything. And I've seen
Yep.
young families trying to get to the rail transit with suitcases by going to the airport. And I just fear for them trying to stay alive, right, to get across the street. So just
Yeah.
interested. I know you showed some stuff, well, maybe somebody else a while ago, but what are the options there?
Yeah, so it comes down to funding, unfortunately. It is in District 4, that intersection, as well as Hamden. I think it's like it's a 5-section intersection. It's like Hamden, Dahlia, Happy Canyon are the 2 priority intersections that we have in the district to prioritize when funding becomes available. Now, there are several vehicles where we could get funding, and we're working on that, whether it's through the bonds, through our own CIP, through grants that become available. But those are our priorities. Having said that, unfortunately, there isn't funding to do what we want to do with the whole intersection there. It was looked at and prioritized as part of the Evan corridor study, which again is a necessary step towards implementation, but we just don't have funding at this point. Hopefully, we will see that being prioritized in the future. near future, but it's not being funded tomorrow.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, June.
Okay, so I used to live around DU, so I am passionate about a lot of those areas. But my main question, I'm sure you saw the very puzzled look on my face when we were talking about the Bellevue and Union thing. So I just need someone to quickly explain to me what was discussed to do at Union, because from what I'm looking at on the map, it's a third of a mile away from the Bellevue interchange. There's a light rail station right there. It's where all the bicyclists and pedestrians cross in DTC, which already doesn't have very good transit access. So like, why is there even a discussion or consideration of an additional interchange in that area? Like, the distances would be so close, it would mess up pedestrian connectivity, it would cost a ton of money. We might have to do some relocations for some of the light rail stuff. Like, just tell me why it's even being considered to
Why
add
we're
something there.
I think it's just an ongoing conversation at this point. But Nick, do you have anything? I mean, as Nick said, we are, I believe the conversation has always been to keep Union a main thoroughfare for biking and pedestrian and the same access. But I don't know if Nick has anything to add. Sorry.
No, I can add. Yeah, this is just one of those magical places that is multi-jurisdictional. One side's Denver, one side is Greenwood Village on there, and then you've got a state highway or a interstate going right through the middle of it. And so there were Greenwood Village, and trying to be. I was not here at the beginning of the conversation. I was in here for a lot of it on there, really kind of initiated that conversation, concerned with congestion going through I-25 there. There's been some development in the area. And so as a part of that, started looking at different types of interchanges on there. And it is those interchanges that we have been resistant to any of those interchanges. You hit it. If you look at the intersection, it doesn't seem that close. These are some pretty intense interchanges that were potentially being proposed and discussed on there. And so that's where we've been in the conversation with them. And that's how it got started. Just kind of Greenwood Village interested in doing things to the interchange, as it relates to their municipality on there. But of course, partnering with us because we touch in the middle.
And I think this
Yeah.
is just coming up on our radar again, as I said, because there's been changes, I believe, on both sides. And so that's why I included it. It's just because the conversation has come up again with the councilwoman.
I mean, in my mind, just to maybe potentially, I don't know what internal thinking you all have, but in my mind, what I'm going to compare this to right now is there's the whole 23rd Avenue and Spear interchange project that CDOT is heading up. And there, CDOT, a lot of the project team, from my understanding, is in favor of removing the 23rd Avenue interchange because it's so close to another interchange. So that's what we're looking at there. So, have you all had any discussions with Greenwood Village about buying up transit service to potentially reduce traffic congestion that way? I know the densities in Greenwood Village are pretty bad for that, but tossing tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars at an interchange refresh, in my mind, that is a lot of money for something which I really have doubts when it comes to efficacy. And I've got other questions past this one if anyone has any, but I don't want to harp on this point too much, but I do not see the sense in this.
No, to be honest, I don't think we're even there in the conversation. I think this is very early.
Okay.
June,
On to
I will
actual.
speak because I don't think the city can say this. But what I'm hearing, and based on the experience that I had as a resident in this neighborhood, that it was something that Greenwood Village was, I don't know if pushing is the right word, but bringing it up. And because it was multi-jurisdictional, the city of Denver had to respond. But my understanding is that the city of Denver's kind of stakeholders, residents that came to the public meeting, and spoke up. And I don't think Councilwoman Black was super supportive. I think just generally the city and Nick's kind of confirmed what the North Star came out of those conversations. So there just wasn't anywhere to go because the city was, stakeholders representing the city and county of Denver were not supportive of basically all the proposals that were being put forward.
And that may
And
be at the
now
end of
they're
the
just
day.
gonna have a conversation and again, since there's
Yes.
been some stakeholder
Yes.
changes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Maybe we'll end up with the same result. Who knows?
Totally.
Okay, so actual other questions about about projects that are actually happening and are worthwhile. So, Yale Avenue underpass, I'm very happy to see that actually happening. That is a really rough area to cross. So
Yeah.
happy that's happening. Has there been any conversation between the project team around getting on Yale Avenue from Colorado, adding some kind of bike facility on Yale Avenue to get over to that area with the Highline Canal? Because that's an
yes,
obvious connection.
we have talked about that, and I think it's, if I'm not mistaken, I could pull it up. I think it is on the Denver Moves bike plan. Like for future, again, don't have funding for it at this juncture.
Have you all flagged because I know the sidewalk condition on Evans between Colorado and I-25 is really horrible. Have you all flagged that for the sidewalk master plan that's going to be happening?
So no, and Nick can probably speak to this if I misspeak, but from my understanding, the master plan has not, because we haven't kicked off the process, we have not identified areas yet.
Correct.
Okay. Because in my mind, those sidewalks are very narrow and in very poor condition.
Sure.
And likely should be prioritized.
Yeah.
Let me see. What's the status on the university intersections at Bucktill and Evans in that project, if you know off the top of your head?
I mean, they are part of the project. If you give me like 2 seconds, I can tell you. What do you want to know specifically, or just
timeline? When are these things
timeline.
happening?
Yes. So the timeline is University and Bucktill. So I don't know. The project will be in 2 phases, and we don't know which one will go first at this point because we don't have a contractor on board. So I don't know. The general timeline is 2026 to 2027, but I don't know which part's going to go first. So that's the best I can give you. But in the coming months, like 3 months, we will have a better idea of that once we have a contractor on board.
Okay, that's all my questions. Thank you for letting me eat up a lot of time.
Oh, no problem. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, June. We're almost at time. So unless there's a burning question, I kind of gave everyone a heads up in the chat that I was going to do this. I see no more questions. Molly, thank you so much for
thanks for having
giving
me.
us an update.
And if anything does happen with the I-20, I will let you guys know. I apologize. It felt like a fire, but just an FYI at this point.
I appreciate the FYI. I like having FYIs. So especially on big potential interchanges.
Yeah, nothing is happening. So yeah. All right. Well, thanks for having me.
Now. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, Molly.
Thank you.
Okay. Great. So now we have about 25 minutes to chit chat about the letters that we have drafted. June, can I hand it to you to kind of give a quick overview of where we're at with the 2 letters?
Yes. So our little budget committee had 2 meetings to draft and discuss our letters. And I see there are some changes, copy editing things that people are putting in these. So we will go one at a time. I'm keeping an eye on the clock, Eileen. So we can get through this quickly. Okay. We'll start with the bond letter. You all, in your emails, should have this from Alan. So I will wait for people to hop in here, and I'll also post the link in chat.
June, would you like to share it, or would you like Aileen or I to share it so folks can see it on the screen for those attending that are not as part of the board?
Yeah, I can do that. I don't mind doing it.
Yeah, I'm not hosting, so I can't share, but someone else
Oh,
can
I don't know if I
see
can do that. That's a good
Nadine, could you
point.
give
Oh, yeah, I
Aileen
can't.
sharing privileges?
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Okay. So while we get that set up, I will also say, sorry for being late. I was working on state budget amendments. So, and now let's look at city stuff. Okay. We've got the letter. We've got the letter. Okay.
And this is the
S-
bond letter, right?
yes, this is our bond letter first. This is the more important one for us to get out the door today. So we included, we tried to hit every issue area with realistic asks. So starting with at the very top is adding Vision Zero improvements on 5 high injury network corridors. This would add 5 new high injury network corridors to the speed program. The approximate cost of each of these is about $1 million. So this would be about $5 million in bond funding for some signal retimings, for automated enforcement, for bulb outs, like flex posts, signs, that sort of thing. So that's very much low cost, high impact in this plan. Next up is Safe Routes to Schools. We are asking in this letter for funding 10 Tier 1 active infrastructure projects. There's about 80 or so of these Tier 1s and a lot more Tier 2s and 3s identified by the Safe Routes to Schools action plan. But the point here is to start really pushing some active infrastructure projects that help kids to get to school, and helping out our SRTS program, which has been consistently below funding levels, at least preferred funding levels, since it was introduced. So hopefully we can get that in the bonds. Next up is speed and red light cameras around Denver and high injury areas, just getting these installed, right? In this, we're asking for 10 red light cameras and 5 speed cameras. Reason being, most of the prioritization so far has been for speed cameras, both in terms of mobile and fixed cameras. And so this would sort of start to rebalance it, and also not necessarily just in those high injury network areas, but in those other areas with need that aren't included in the speed program necessarily. Next up is broadly just saying very limited funding for deferred maintenance. You'll see this as we get to our budget letter, but bonding, like accumulating debt and paying interest on deferred maintenance projects, is just not what we should be doing with our bond dollars. Those should be for new things, not old things that we need to fix. So deferred maintenance budgets should come out of our general budget, not out of bonds. Next up is to continue to echo that we prioritize projects that serve underserved communities first. And in addition, we say that in areas that have other dollars allocated, say, for example, downtown in the DDA, that we put that money instead of, say, for example, adding on to the DDA what they've got already, but saying, no, the DDA, we've got to pay for some of our infrastructure downtown using those funds. And in those areas without another funding source, we make sure that's where the bond dollars go. Next up is to complete and start building out that Denver Moves Bikes update map. In specific, the wording that we settled on was in each council district to add at least one bikeway that has a connection to another adjacent council district. The real logic here is that we make sure that we build out a network, right, of these new Denver Moves bikes, higher comfort bikeways, or this sort of core network that's in that plan. To make sure that we really move from like this more piecemeal approach where we're missing all these connections to really thinking holistically and funding at least a small complete bike network throughout the city. Next up is on transit stops. We settled on identifying the 25 bus stops with the highest ridership in the city that do not already have bus shelters or adequate amenities, and then just providing those with a bus shelter, a bench, right, lighting, the basic stuff. And also potentially looking at those bus stops that have those transfers between different lines, because those are going to be places where people are going to be stepping off of one bus, waiting for a while for another bus, and then getting onto that next bus. So having that amenity there, especially in times where it's rainy or it's really hot or there's a lot of snow, will be very helpful. And then finally, we attached our poll data down at the very bottom so people can see what the board prioritizes more generally. Now I will toss to questions. Anyone have questions on this bond letter?
This is Julie. Do we need a motion to?
That was gonna be my question.
Yeah,
I
so
don't know, but do we?
if the chair will grant it, I'm more than happy to make motions for this. But final call, any questions, any amendments, comments on this bond letter?
I think it's great.
Can you scroll just one time slowly down, just real slow? I don't really have a question. I just want to make sure I saw what I saw.
Yeah, so just going through.
And I'm going to quickly approve that comment amendment.
Where needed.
I
yeah.
love that this time, I do have a comment that just, I love that this, this particular letter is tied to some data and that it does seem very thorough in what we have, you know, previously prioritized. So I'm loving this. This is good.
Yeah. And the point with writing all of these provisions is we wanted these to be actionable and measurable, right? Which is why we're asking for specific numbers of things, right? Or aiming for specific projects or having specific data points. That way, you know, there are deliverables here that are measurable and we will be able to see in the, you know, the final bond package. That was why we selected a lot of these things, was also to hit every sort of need area with an ask that also wasn't enormous, but was very doable within the constraints. And also something that would impact, hopefully, help the entire city and every council district.
Was there a
Yeah, I just
total
want to say
dollar?
thank you.
Oh.
No,
Oh, yeah,
go ahead, go
Tinsy.
ahead.
Oh, I guess my only question is, you know, let's say the bond is like yes to almost all of these. I would love to see a dollar amount tied to some of these, if at all possible. I'm not saying it's necessary, but I think that, you know, we do have a certain amount of vibrant bond dollars. So I would love to, you know, have the mayor say, okay, these number of citizens have these ideas that we can fund. Here's DOTI's letter. We can fund X amount of this based off what they're wanting. And they, oh, look, they already have a dollar amount of time. You know, like I think that that would just be very helpful.
Yeah, unfortunately, with a lot of these asks, like say, for example, go to that Safe Routes to Schools Tier 1 active infrastructure projects. Like those are very variable, right? So we can't necessarily attach a dollar amount. I mean, some of these I can pretty easily attach a dollar amount to, like the 5 high-entry network corridors. That would be about $5 million, right?
Sure.
But like, say, for example, you know, the bike corridor network streets, right? In one district, we might do a neighborhood bikeway, which is, you know, a few $100,000 per mile at most. And then in another district, it might be a core network protected bike lane on an arterial, and that is much higher cost. And
I would
so
love
I
to see
can't,
that explained. I would love to actually see that somewhere explained out just a tad, exactly how you were saying, you know, that there is for these X amount of projects, there is a range of this dollar amount for a project like this and this dollar amount for a project like that. Even that is sufficient, I think, for the mayor to be able to kind of wrap his head around and the council members to wrap their head around what this is going to take.
yeah, I've got a quick question for Nick, potentially. Not to add more onto your plate. I mean, I haven't done the full calculations for all this stuff, but in connection with this bond letter, would you be able to follow up with the mayor regarding implementation costs for some of these things? Is that at all possible? Like, I don't want to shunt all this onto you, but just wanted to flag potentially maybe we can work on that.
And when you say implementation costs, as in here's how much we think it's going to actually cost?
Yeah, for these.
Yeah, I mean, I think because what this is going to go to, obviously, this will go to the team that is managing the bond right now in our Department of Finance on there.
Yeah.
And the person in particular that we work with as actually formerly with DOTI on there. And so I think probably he would have, I can give him the context on there, and that's probably the best way to go about it. He will be able to kind of understand, and they have a team that is costing out ideas, because obviously no one putting stuff into or very few people putting stuff into the website no kind of soup to nuts cost on there. So I don't think that will damage the persuasiveness of the letters not to have that super nailed down.
Add though, because I helped to draft up some of these bullets, that what I think, Tinsley, the strength in this letter and the strength in the specificity that we do offer is specific enough in terms of what outcomes we're aiming for, and particularly also like in the bike network one, what's the goal? What at the end of the day, what do we want to see? And so there's probably a lot of different ways to achieve that goal. There's a lot of ways to fund, well, no, I'm not on the high injury networks, but maybe on the safe routes to school plan, and giving the bond committee that flexibility of like, yeah, actually, maybe they can deliver on the 10 tier 1 active infrastructure projects because they have been able to find 10 of them that can fit in our budget. Maybe they can complete the network that we envision in this letter because they're able to see some small gaps that they can use the bond money to fill in. And maybe it doesn't require a full build out of a protected corridor. So I think giving them that flexibility, but being clear on what our hopes and dreams are for the outcomes is our goal.
This letter is fantastic. Like, I think that this is exactly what it needs to be. I think my input was more just like, okay, we have this amount of X bond dollars. Like, how many of these projects can we complete with this bond money versus maybe finding another funding stream, like you're saying, and being, flexible and finding other avenues for some of these projects to still get done because we, are recommending them to be done. I think that I just kind of wanted it to be like real bright and say, you can afford this. And then here's what's left of the bonds after.
Well,
is more where I was getting at. Yeah.
Yeah, Tinsley, if I will, from my mental estimation, just looking at these numbers and just guesstimating, gut instinct on this, the bond package is about $800 million, right?
It'll be over.
Yeah, over 800 million, right? But it's less than 1 billion, over 800 million. It's going to settle sort of in that middle. And sort of part of the thinking here, right, is there's going to be other specific transportation projects that are in this that we haven't contemplated, and that's fine. But in my view, this, at most, I think this will cost $40 to $50 million if all of these are implemented, right? So that is very reasonable within the bond package. So I think that we've hit the proper middle ground without being too prescriptive as to make it unworkable, but also not like kind of shooting ourselves in the foot by being like, oh, this will cost this much potentially, and then it ends up costing more, right? And then I wanted to give the flexibility, but be measurable and be specific. So they can work around it and they can sort of find the projects that fulfill these in a way that is very workable, but also leaves that room for those community bond meetings, for those like really district by district, those like small projects that we haven't identified. Like this is our framework. And then we aren't eating up all the transportation bond dollars with this letter, but we are sort of providing overall guidance that are going to hit every single transportation issue area in a way that is financially feasible and specific enough to be workable. So I'm going to say for right now, because we're close to the end there, if it's all right, I'm not going to add amendments to specify specific dollar amounts, because I feel pretty confident that like we're good enough on this end. And like Nick, thank you for your input on that. I think we're specific enough for this to be actionable. So, okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, Alan?
May I motion to vote on this letter?
Yes.
Motion to vote on the letter.
Second.
I second it.
Okay,
Okay.
so we'll do a vote. Everyone put your hand up if you're in favor of this letter. I think everybody has their hand up. Lower your hand. I don't know if I have to, but anybody opposed to this letter? Okay. Do I have to ask for abstentions? Anyone abstaining?
No.
Okay,
We
we're
could just
good.
say, seeing no opposition, the DOTI Board Advisory, the DOTI Advisory Board General Obligation Bond Letter is approved.
Thank you, June.
Unanimously.
Okay.
Yeah.
Unanimously. That's right. Thank you, Joe.
Yeah.
Okay, we will, Alan and June and I will work on putting the final logistical touches to the letter and getting it off to the right people. June, do you want to take the lead on the next letter?
Yes. Okay. I move the DOTI Advisory Board 2025 DOTI budget letter to the DOTI Advisory Board. Sorry, I'm pulling in my General Assembly procedural stuff here now. So link to this budget letter is in the chat. Eileen, if you could share it on your screen, that'd be wonderful. Okay, you're going to see how this dovetails with the bond letter. So we know this next year's budget is going to be difficult. There's significant federal budget cuts. The Colorado General Assembly is cutting money from the Multimodal Options Fund and FASTER, and a lot of that stuff can be passed through. So we're going to see it's going to be a rough budget year again. And we're expecting probable, if I had to guess, significant consumer spending downturns, and Denver is very sales tax reliant. So it's going to be a rough year, y'all, and this acknowledges it. So we are starting our letter with something that I am very passionate about, which is that the department should proactively work towards increasing transportation funding to higher levels as identified in Denver Moves Everyone. Basically, DME identifies $800 million in additional annual investment is required for full implementation. And that is that's a high number for a very aspirational transportation system, but that's what we should be aiming for, right? So thank you for adding those commas. So there's just listing some of the things Denver Moves Everyone lists, which includes upgrading traffic signals, upgrading 2,500 bus stops, right? Our bond letter is asking for 25. Denver Moves Everyone comprehends 100 times that. Maintaining our pavement at 95%, maintaining our structures at 95% in good condition. I believe our current pavement condition index is hovering at around 73%, by the way. So that's where we're at right now, and it's declining year after year, which is always fun to see in the budget. And also building out 1,100 miles of sidewalks, building out, I believe, 500 miles of new bike lanes. There's a lot of good stuff in DME. Our budget is currently completely inadequate for this purpose. We are spending money out of the CPF and other special funds for fleet replacement and deferred maintenance rather than out of the general fund as it should be. So our first point is like, hey, besides this budget year, we need to do something broadly about transportation revenue and spending in our city because it's completely inadequate, just in general. Next up, the Transportation and Mobility Special Revenue Fund should not be dipped into for general purpose expenses and should be dedicated for multimodal and safety projects. We saw this problem last year. I expect we're going to see it again this year unless, Nick, I'm looking at you, and I love you and appreciate you, but also Dottie. We need Dottie to keep that fund whole because that has not been done recently, unfortunately. So we asked that this money be dedicated to SRTS, Denver Moves Bike implementation, the concurrent bike paving program, Vision Zero, funding transit to mountain parks, and also that again, going back to the bond, no SRF funding should be dedicated for general purpose capital projects which are otherwise eligible for bond funding, right? So we're trying to keep our revenue sources we're trying not to double dip here into things that should be used for other things. Next up, the right-of-way enforcement team. So we want the right-of-way enforcement team to be fully staffed, and we just got some data. Thank you, Alan, for following up on this. And I'm just going to keep running. So we got data back from DOTI about the exact revenue numbers that our right-of-way enforcement team pulls in through ticketing and making sure that our regulations are enforced. And as of right now, each right-of-way enforcement team member generates 8.4 times the amount of revenue as we spend in order to hire them and retain them. So we really need this team to be fully funded and fully staffed, because the problem we've really seen in previous years hasn't been necessarily the funding authorization level for this team, but has been the recruitment and retention. So we want all vacant positions to be filled in this letter, and that if they have difficulty filling positions, to come back to us so we can collaborate on ways to increase hiring and retention. This is a revenue generating role within DOTI, which helps keep our right-of-way inspected. And something we also consistently hear is that people are frustrated that ROWE doesn't work on weekends. So increasing staffing levels so we have team members on weekends as well will help make sure that our sidewalks are kept free and help make sure that street sweeping can occur properly. This is a really important point. They generate 8.4 times the amount of revenue that they cost, and there's demand for additional ROWE staffing on the weekends. So this is something, I mean, I'm very happy with this little amendment that was added here, and we should probably vote on that because it's substantive instead of copy editing, but we'll get to that. Next up, we are thankful for the emphasis on achieving Vision Zero goals and the introduction of the SPEED program. And consistent with our bond letter, we ask for an additional 5 corridors be added in 2026. Next up, continued emphasis on equity investment be made in the communities that need it the most. We're really shouting out Councilwoman Torres here and advocating for those shovel-ready projects in the west side of Denver to be filled out. In addition, we are advocating for the sidewalk network build-out in GES and East Colfax first, given that those are very underserved communities with really strong sidewalk needs, right? In addition, that other equity neighborhoods continue to receive investment in projects in 2026. And if anyone from DOTI is listening regarding this, the NEST Index is a great place to start. And then, as in past years, we ask for a pilot program to be run in the wintertime to plow neighborhood bikeways during snow events. As many of you know, DOTI does have a program to plow our protected bike lanes during snow events. But given the shift in focus to neighborhood bikeways in recent budget years, including these facilities on that plow list is going to be really important. And we ask for plowing to be done on at least one high usage neighborhood bikeway and more if staffing allows. And I know that's always sort of touchy in terms of, you know, what staff have time for, but these are a critical part of our transportation network. So we want those to be plowed as well. Okay, that's what our budget letter is. It is a little bare, unfortunately, compared to previous budget years, an acknowledgement that this is going to be another tough budget one. So we've mostly asked for, you know, we gate off this fund, don't spend it on this, like what multimodal funding we have, keep it whole, and let's keep our SRFs and our bond dollars prioritized appropriately. So, comments or questions?
Can I ask one question?
Yes.
think I heard at one point that this is part 1, that we were thinking about writing maybe a second letter once the numbers are public, which would happen like what, in August or something like that?
Yes. So this letter, as of right now, is going to DOTI before they finalize their internal budget requests. So this is to sort of help guide their thinking in that before we've got specific numbers. As in previous budget years, we will be writing another bond letter before the budget is voted on at City Council, once we actually have public numbers. Okay, Joe.
Hang on. Yeah, well, I have one comment, and I think that this committee represents the whole city. So I have a bit of an issue of calling out a certain project. I like that we're going to do shovel ready projects and in the neighborhoods that need it the most. But I think on this committee, I'm a little uncomfortable with calling out if you could read that, I can't. The Taurus project on the west side of Denver. We should do shovel-ready projects and we should do projects in the neighborhoods that need it the most without calling out a specific neighborhood. That's just the way I feel. Obviously, I represent different neighborhoods than that, but we're not opposed, obviously, to where the most need is to giving that those issues, but not a
Could we
specific
say
project.
could we say
Yeah.
for example, would that make you feel more comfortable?
Yes. A project such as, right.
Such as, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Alan, I saw you had your hand up.
Aileen got it for me. We're
Great.
Oh, good. We're mind
So,
melding.
let's see. We have the previous.
We can add that in. I think we
Yeah.
understand the
Yeah,
sentiment
that can
there.
come later.
Yeah,
Right.
Eileen,
Yeah.
could you add that in the appropriate
Yeah.
place? I'm going to move up to a substantive amendment up top real quick that I've got highlighted in ROWE, just adding that math that they generate about 8.4 times the amount of revenue as the average team member's compensation, or not compensation, total. Sorry, I'm pulling up the email. For total average cost, I'm going to change that to as the average team members total cost. Okay.
Yeah, that's better.
So quickly, I'm going to ask if there's opposition to add this letter in italics. I will give 10 seconds for that.
I'll just say, I mean, I like it. I think I'm good to keep it in. It always bugs me talking about enforcement as focusing on the revenue generation piece, because ideally they're not making more than their cost because, you know, people are following the rules. And you know, we want to get to a system where they have very little enforcement to do because it's built up in a way that they don't, you know, that people aren't doing those things anyway.
Sure.
Yeah.
But I think at this point, it makes a lot of sense, and I'm good to keep it in.
Okay.
I guess what I hear you're saying, and I totally agree, until it no longer becomes cost, you don't need it anymore, right? Whenever we get
Right.
everybody, which is our goal, to attend the right speed, then we don't need to make any money off of them. Right?
Which,
That's what we're
will
trying to
we ever
say.
get there? Who knows? But
Well,
yeah,
that's
you said it's
that's
our
another
goal.
story.
It's our
I'm
goal.
going
Exactly.
to, in regards to that, I'm going to quickly rewrite the language here as consistency in right-of-way enforcement is critical to achieving DOTI's operational goals
safety
and
goals.
making our city safer and more accessible for all.
Yeah.
I like
Because
that a lot.
I was thinking when you were talking, June, that yeah, sure, these guys make money by finding people, but when they're out and about doing their job, it helps remind everyone else to follow the rules. And how many times have we talked about all the complaints we're hearing from our peers in the city about our fellow citizens not following? So just having these guys out doing their jobs like helps remind people to follow the rules.
Now, I wish we could ask the city to transfer some enforcement of the parking minimums at bars and breweries over to right-of-way enforcement, but I think that's more complicated than we need to get into.
It is. That's not a line item I think I'd feel comfortable posing at the moment. Okay. So any opposition to the wording as it currently sits, which is given that DOTI is shared with us that the average right-of-way enforcement team member generates about 8.4 times the amount of revenue as the average team member's total cost. We hope the city will increase staffing for this team as consistency in right-of-way enforcement is critical to achieving DOTI's operational goals and making our city safer and more accessible for all.
Good.
Okay. Any opposition to this wording? Seeing none, this wording is adopted. Or any last comments, amendments on our initial budget letter? And we are almost at time, but if you got a critical one, let me know right now. All right. Are any members of the DOTI Advisory Board opposed to this letter's adoption? Seeing none, by unanimous consent, the DOTI Advisory Board adopts our 2025 DOTI budget letter Thank you all.
Well, and I want to say thank you to June too for spearheading this. It's been really, I missed our second meeting, but it was really great to work with you and the rest of the team that helped to craft this, but thank you for your leadership. So much,
Okay.
it's so helpful.
Last month's minutes, I guess. Thank you. Oh, we are going to do another budget letter, so be on the lookout for that in a few months.
Yep. Alan.
Aileen, a quick update on the minutes. We do have a rough draft of them. Andy was nice enough to take them in Paul's absence. It is pasted in the files, the board files that I think I emailed to most of you with the link. I'll defer up to you if you'd like to go through now or perhaps table to next month when folks have a little more time to
Let's table to
review.
next month.
It's very
Yeah, let's table
yeah.
to next month. But thank you for getting that sorted out in the meeting. We appreciate that, at least in a draft form. So we'll go through the formal process of approving the meeting minutes from last month's meeting at next month's meeting, along with this month's meeting. Okay, with that, it's 6 o'clock. Normally we have time for odds and ends, so I'll just, is there anything anyone desperately needs to say before we close out?
Yes, Nick, once we send in our letters, can you give us a report out of what the department thinks? Thanks, bye.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you so much, everyone. We're over time. We'll see you next month.
Thank you. And
Thank
if you
you.
want to get something done, just ask June. That's all I got to
Yeah,
say.
no kidding.